Hi, my name is Gord. I'm out on a road trip in my 2010 Prius that I converted into a tiny camper. This video is going to be part of my build series. We're going to talk about my main sort of electrical system and the house battery and all of that kind of stuff. I'll give you the TLDR version. Even though I've hardwired AC outlets and USB throughout the car, those are all being fed by an ecoflow River 2 Pro. I don't move the power station around the way some people do. It's basically fixed in place, and then I've hardwired stuff throughout the car. I think this is a nice option for a smaller vehicle build. All right, so yeah, I want to talk about the outlets that I wired in and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, let's get into it. All right, so here's sort of the main kind of command center in the passenger seat cabinet. You can see on the very far left, I've got the Renogy remote. Next to that, I've got an AC outlet. I've got at the top above that, I've got two USB plugs. Below that, I've got just a grommet so that wires can come kind of out from the EcoFlow that is underneath of this cabinet. And then I also have a water level meter, but that'll be part of my kind of plumbing video. If we come around to the back, in the back cabinet here, and I have videos on how I made these cabinets as well. I have another AC outlet and another pair of just USB A's. The fridge cable also goes down under into the cabinet. And then if we come around and just take a look inside the cabinet here, you can see the EcoFlow is you can see that the EcoFlow is kind of in this little box where it doesn't move, and that the rest of the electrical system is kind of up on the wall there. Yeah, you can kind of see the whole system, including the WeBoost. All right, so that's enough of that. Let's take a look at how I turned an EcoFlow into a hardwired house battery. All right, I wanted to show you my plan for the electric because I don't think I'll be able to film this very easily in the car. So I have marine triplex wire. This is 12 gauge, which should be able to carrying the load that the EcoFlow can supply. And the plan is to wire up two of these GFCI grounded fault protectors. We're gonna have two of these that are just separate, and they're gonna go into two different plugs. So yeah, two of these and wired to one of these that I'm gonna plug into here. You can get smaller versions of this, but this is gonna sort of be hidden in my utility closet. And I feel like it's worth having this sort of beefier protection on all of this, right? So ground fault protection here, beefier protection here, 12 gauge wire here, and is marine wire, right? So it's stranded rather than one single cable. My understanding is that you can't hook this around things, and you can't press this into certain kinds of stuff and these kinds of builds because they're stranded. So one of the solutions is to get like eyelets or little forked plugs that you can get and attach those on. Although after watching some other people do van builds, these have like little plates that you can tighten down on top of this, and I think it's okay to attach the stranded wire that way. If anybody knows otherwise, let me know down in the comments. All right, and then these are going to go in just these normal junction boxes. So to work with one of these, if you haven't before, box just controls electricity, makes everything a little bit safer. So these tend to have a silver screw and gold screw, and then the ground screw. So sort of color coded. So your white wire is going to go to your silver screw, black wire to the bronze gold screw. And green to, on this one, it's actually green. Cool. Obviously, you would do this wired up on the walls, but I'm just doing it here on the table as a demonstration. One reason I'm putting it in the box is so I don't electrocute myself. Good. And then this just has 3 screws, which I already loosened off camera, and it also has little plates that we can press the wire into. Yeah, okay, so this also has 2 different colors. It's very hard to see. So, yeah, just make sure you run the polarity right. If you're not sure, go ahead and Google, like, which side of this is what. So, before you attach that, run the wire up through here. Might be worth running it through these boxes and stuff before you strip it. This stranded wire is a bit annoying to you. You'll also notice that I stripped far less on this end just because there isn't nearly as much space. There's a lot of room in these boxes to coil up the stripped wires. There's much less room inside of this. All right, and then we can just put it all back together. And so plan is to be able to run power from this throughout the car instead of having to move this or have extension cords. So we're going to turn our AC on. We are going to try plugging this in. So, yeah. So the nice thing about the GFCI plugs is actually it gives you another way to tell if your girder is on or anything else. So there's a little green light here for the test. So green light. And I just have a lamp here. So there we go. So then the idea is this is entirely modular, right? If I ever need to take this out and put it in, I can. And then the idea is there'll be 2. So there'll be one in the back of the car, there'll be one in the passenger seat cabinet, and they'll both have plugs like this that I can unplug or unplug. So it'll be very modular kind of a setup. The next thing would be having the DC system. Which for me is just going to be some USBs. So I have these sort of USB outlets. I'll have links to all this stuff in the description. It came with this fused wire and it had little eyelets on the end, which I threw away. I cut off and threw away, but you could wire this directly to a 12-volt battery is I think what this is meant to be for. It's for like adding USBs to old cars or something. And it does have a nice fuse on the inside. So what I've done is I cut off the eyelets and then I connected a 5521 barrel port to it. In fact, the ecoflow comes with this thing. It's like 5525 on one side and 5521 on the other, both male. I honestly don't know what they expect this is to be used for, but I just cut it in half and wired it to this USB outlet here. If we plug this into the 12-volt system and turn it on, come over to this now. Hopefully you can see that this is in fact working. All right, so these are my back cabinets. I want to add an AC outlet and a little USB outlet that are going to be wired from there to where the ecoflow is going to be in the passenger seat cabinet. So to do that, I am going to run, this is marine grade triplex wire. The difference between this and what you get at the hardware store, which I hope you can see, is that it is stranded. So it's not a single thick cable. It is many small strands of wire. My understanding from watching a bunch of, YouTube videos on van life and whatever else is that this is just like for the vibrations, all these little wires are much less likely to break than one big wire. All right, so here I am in the passenger door. I have kind of wound out probably, more cable than I think I need. And I'm going to kind of work from the front back rather than trying to fish it through the other way. So yeah, Um, I've got this behind this, uh, the passenger, um, seatbelt, and then it's just a matter of kind of, yeah, there you go, pulling up this trim and routing the wire underneath. So I can't do this with one hand, but yeah, I'm gonna kind of route it around up through here and then around and back and pull it up into there. Okay, so I've got the passenger drawer, piece of little trim off. Underneath, there's this cable management system that's already here. So I am routing the AC, the marine AC line into here. And actually, I didn't show it before, but this is the inverter remote control button thing, which I put into this little cable system. And then, yeah, the AC goes into this system. Yeah, so there we go. And then this just clips back on. Um, I need to sort that out, but this just clips back on. Um, in the trunk here, I just use some little clips that can be screwed on. So there's just two of them here, and I'll have a few more inside of on the wall inside of here, and then this should all be nice and secure. So yeah, routing that cable was really easy. They come under here with all the stuff for the airbag system, and then up out the other side. So here is the remote for the inverter, which I'll have in the panel that's there. Here is the 120 line, which there'll also be a 120 outlet right about there. I need to cut this down, but there's the 18 gauge 12-volt line that runs all the way to the back. All right, so I have wired in the AC and 12-volt USB outlets in the back of the car here. This is nice because I can do my cooking here if I want. That I'm going to bring the ecoflow out or run a bunch of cables. This will just be here when I need it. Okay, so here's the side panel that faces the driver's side. I'm going to wire in AC power and the inverter controller and a USB. So I'm gonna just use the jigsaw. You can already see I've drilled the corners to cut out these openings. All right, so there's the holes. Renergy controller pops in, and then it just has 4 screws, and then there's a cover plate. So I'll get that in off camera. It's pretty easy. Yeah, it just snaps on, snaps off. In terms of these electrical boxes, there's obviously a lot of different kinds. Um, I think the more common kind I've used inside of houses have like a little plate that sticks off here that you would attach to something else, or sometimes they have like nails that go into a stud. I didn't think any of that would work with 3/4 inch plywood, mainly because when there's like a shelf connector on the side, it's actually meant, I think, for a 1/2 inch plywood. Um, so that would have meant that this would be recessed too far into the wood for my liking. So what I've done instead is I've got one of these ones, and anybody who's ever built something like this before, let me know. But I've got one of these ones that's sort of meant to go on to existing construction. So you stick this in the wall hole and then you tighten this up against the drywall. The advantage I thought of one like this, though, is that it has these little screws. Well, it has these screws, I think, that can help it potentially connect to the back of everything, but I can also attach it to the plywood here, and then the faceplate will still cover all of that. So if anyone has any ideas about this, I would love to hear those down in the comments. And then the last thing I need to do is just drill a hole for a little USB thing. All right, so with the back USB wired to a 12-volt barrel plug, um, I'm sort of running out of ports. There's only 3 12-volt ports on the ecoflow, and I really wanted a USB up here that just feeded to the ecoflow. And since the ecoflow is right down below, I was able to get this little I don't even know. There'll be a link, obviously, to all of this stuff in the description. It's kind of billed as a hub. I honestly don't understand why it has two USBs, although I suppose that'll be better for power delivery. Yeah, like I said, the one in the back is wired to a 12-volt barrel port. Not that dissimilar, not that dissimilar from how you would do it in a van, but this one is just going to be a bit of a like a USB extension. And so, yeah, I mean, obviously, it should be clear. You can just go ahead and wire this up, stick it in the hole, plug it in, and you're in business. So, I mean, I'll add this little nut off camera, and then, yeah, you can just plug in the USBs. All right, so I've got the ecoflow mounted in this thing that's going to keep it from just flying around while I'm driving. Notice that I cut out holes for the vents and I left space for it to breathe. Okay, and so here is the electrical system underneath of the cabinet, plugged into the ecoflow. So I've got the two wall plugs. I don't know which is which, but it doesn't much matter. The nice thing about the ecoflow is like right now the inverter is off and I can control this with the app. Here are the two USBs that go to the USB outlet that is in the passenger seat kind of console. And then these are the two quite long USB cables that just go through the grommet that I can pull out as needed. I have the two barrel plugs. This one powers the back USB outlet, and the other barrel port powers the water level sensor in the plumbing system. Unfortunately, these are just not long enough, so I have to kind of plug those in after I've seated the ecoflow in its little box here, which I've designed to have, hopefully enough airflow so that these cutouts are for the vents. And I can't really do this with one hand. But the idea is that after I plug all this stuff in, I made almost all of these long enough that I can plug them in kind of out here in the door, and then I can seat it in its little box. And then this goes to the cigarette lighter, charger, and this goes back to the inverter. So if I need to, so I can have this kind of plugged into the inverter at all times. If I need more than 100-watt charging, all I have to do, that's the inverter controller. All I have to do is turn the inverter on that's connected to the hybrid system, and I can pull as much as 800 watts into this. So yeah, I learned the hard way. So I learned the hard way when I was cooking off the inverter that, these Renogy inverters, I don't know if this is common. Someone could let me know down in the comments. So my induction cooktop can do 600, 800, or 1300 watts, but it defaults to 1300 watts. And so on one of the test trips I did, I forgot to turn it down to 6 and it blew that fuse, which kind of left me high and dry in terms of cooking in the forest. So what I've decided is that I'm not going to run stuff off of the inverter. The inverter is just going to solely be for fast charging the ecoflow. Any electricity that I'm going to do in the car is going to be done through the ecoflow, which has protection so that if I forget to change the induction cooktop, it's just going to switch off and reset, and then I can switch it back on. So it'll either be fast charging or pass-through charging through to the ecoflow, and that all of my electricity needs will be routed through the ecoflow. All right, and here's what I do for solar. I just have one of ecoflow's folding solar panels. This one is the 160-watt one. I believe the River 2 Pro can take up to 200 watts of solar, but the 200-watt panel was just a little bit big for inside of a car. So the 160-watt panel I felt was the nice balance between size and essentially wattage. But because I can charge the house battery off of the inverter if I need to, I deploy the solar when I'm in a static situation, but it's not that stressful to me if it's not delivering enough power. I can always start up the engine and rapid charge the car in an hour or less. But it's nice to get the free energy when you have it. It does have a kickstand, which sometimes I'll use, but more often than not, I just lay it out on the windshield and the hood, and I try to park the car facing south, which has a couple of benefits. So like when the hatch is open and stuff, then I have shade always in the back of the car. Um, but yeah, this is my solar setup. All right, so that's my electric system. I'm actually on the road now as I'm filming this outro and editing these videos. And I gotta say, it is as useful as I thought to have the dedicated hardwired outlets in the back and in the front. It's yeah, I find it really annoying to have to kind of move the ecoflow power station around when I needed it, or to run extension cords, or even having to carry extension cords. Because I have these things hardwired now, it makes living in the car just that much more streamlined. So if you made it this far in the video, definitely thanks for watching. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. That all helps me out. If anything here helped you, I would love to hear about it down in the comments. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. And yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next video.